This week on New to You, looking forward, looking back, 2017, 2018. This is the end of Season 3. Hey everybody, welcome to
May all acquaintance be forgot
And Never Forget to
May all
We two have been about the bush and pulled a going fine. We travelled many a weary mile since the world lang syne.
Hey,
Raise a glass, my friend, and raise a glass of wine. We'll drink a cup of comfort at 2 days of old lang syne. That's another classic from Robert Frost and the Frosties.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is the conclusion of Season 3 of the New to You show. That's another 52 in the can.
Oh, this one flew by.
really
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
What a season.
Can't believe it's
We
already
had
over.
a lot of good stuff. Last year, usually like depending on how our packaging lands, we've been kind of
How the calendar falls.
yeah. I think last year to close out Season 2, we did like a whole episode of looking back and a whole episode of looking forward because we had sort of 2 straggler episodes. And this year we're going to kind of cram it into
2
one.
pesky weeks to
Yeah.
fill.
But yeah, so we'll just kind of get through stuff. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me is
One of your other hosts, Keith Vincent, and
Your other host, Julian Cage.
all right. So we're steering clear of guests on this one.
Yeah, get out of
forget
here.
these guys.
Plenty to get through. Plus we'll rate
You know,
our
it's the
favorite.
holidays. Everyone's out of town. It's so hard to get people in the studio.
Plus we're going to be rating our favorite guests.
That's right.
That's right.
The best and the worst.
We're a recommendation podcast where we recommend guests.
Yeah. We try them out. So you
don't have to.
Yeah. So we have we're
So back to that. We are a recommendation.
we are a
podcast.
recommendation and review podcast.
Even though you wouldn't know it from the last couple weeks, but we do try
Well,
to suggest things that you might like.
Sometimes we recommend things to steer clear of.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
We're a review and
We're
warning podcast.
You know, maybe steer clear of icebergs, even if you are unsinkable.
yeah. Don't try it. Don't test it.
And new isn't always better.
No.
So yeah, let's roll into it. We'll get into talking about it. So let's start off with looking back. So it's been the first year under a new regime.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of fun politics. It was definitely awkward, like pre-recording some of our politics stuff and then getting to that. I'm sure we talked about that we probably would have been good to listen to our Looking Forward podcast prior to this.
Oh yeah, that would have been
But-
good.
It's okay. So it's been a wild year. It seems like, they say time envelopes a little bit and starts to get faster the older you get or whatever. And
Too true.
it seems like things went by quickly, but it seems like 2016 was a long, long time ago.
It went quickly, but boy, every day felt like forever.
Yeah, you lived
Yeah.
it. So.
Yeah, I'd say it's the first half of the year,
Mhm.
just dragged by. It was just endless.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second half started to pick up the pace.
Still creaking by a little bit sometimes. But yeah, it's so let's start with you, Keith. What looking back on 2017, what sort of things that I guess let's keep it to our recommendation things. What stuff maybe we didn't cover on this podcast or we touched on briefly stick out for you? Things that you got into this
Well,
past
you know,
year.
it's interesting. I'm not super prepared for this. I mean, I lived through 2017, but I didn't really compile a list, which I should have done.
I think
but-
there's stuff that stands out.
But
yeah?
I did mark down a thing that I thought bears mentioning, and that's the new Beck record called Colors. It's a really great record. It's going back to some dance stuff and just really firing on all cylinders. If you're a fan of Beck, this is kind of like just fits right in there. You don't even really need to. You don't even need to think about it. It just happens. But 2017 in general was a pretty mixed bag for me. My father died at the beginning of the year, so that kind of just set the whole thing off on a bad foot. But in the meantime, I did get some gainful employment, so that's pretty good too. I can't really think of, I liked Thor, I guess, movie-wise. I've been reading I've read the Magician books by Lev Grossman, and I would recommend all of those things highly. If you do take my recommendation and read the Magician's books, just, take it with a grain of salt. They're pretty pulpy. And
sexy.
Not really, but they are kind of just brooding. I imagine if I were a teenager, I'd like them a lot more. But I would say my main takeaway of the things I was most moved by and enthusiastic about this year have all been podcasts. It's been a while since I've recommended any, but there's just, what the new political landscape. It's a whole new batch of political podcasts.
We talked about that earlier in the year, how you were like, just not, you were not into it.
I swore off all political news and podcasts until probably, I don't know, I want to say September this year.
Wow.
I worked my way back in, and it was really, I guess, the Crooked Network that really, Crooked Media Network that got me back in. And now, they can't put out enough podcasts for me.
What are some of the shows on the Crooked? I haven't heard of them at
Crooked
all.
Media, so the main three people from Crooked Media are Jon Favreau, John Lovett, and Tommy Vitor. And they are all former staffers for the Obama administration.
And they used to do Keeping It 1600.
Yes, that was their podcast. They started with the Ringer Network back in the day. But they kind of branched off and created their own suite of shows. The kind of flagship for them is called Pod Save America.
And they have Pod Save the World.
And Pod Save the World is Tommy Vitor's specific one, where it's more global look at politics, almost like a Secretary of State, kind of like all that type of things. There's a lot of diplomats interviewed and whatnot. But the real fun one that comes off of it is called Love It or Leave It, which is the ex-speechwriter, ex-TV writer, or John Lovett, his show. And it's kind of a panel show, and he's always got it stocked with really funny comedians, but it's all political. John Lovett's show in particular, it's always kind of a bummer because they're always talking about politics, but at the same time, they make it really fun. There are a lot of like fun game show type elements where in the middle of the show, he has these segments where he has an audience. They're live, and they're almost when it's not a tour show. It's taped at the Improv Theater in California, in L.A. And so there's always, which is a comedy theater. So the crowds there are always really ready for comedy, and they're really supportive crowds. They'll have games where he'll call people out of the audience and come up with some really great games, like which one of these lines was actually uttered by a person in Congress, kind of thing. It's really the creativity that they're able to maintain is really great. They'll have dramatic readings of tweets of like some scandal or something happening. They'll have some comedian give it a dramatic rendering. A really, really great show that comes out of that is called Pod Save the People. And I don't know if you guys know who DeRay McKesson is. I don't know if he's a founder or just like one of the faces of the Black Lives Matter movement. But this is his show, and it's just so eye-opening every week. He's just a really, really interesting dude, and his show, Pod Save the People, is just really, really great. And he has a panel at the beginning with some of his journalist friends, and it's just a really, really it's a political podcast, but with a centered around like a race bent. So I would say that those are my main takeaways of the year. Is just like back in the ears,
Yeah.
It's been such a frustrating year for so many reasons, but I feel like these people are able to deliver all the same news that you're aware of because you're just paying attention, but do it in a way that makes you optimistic. They give you actionable items, at the end of every episode. In a way that John Oliver does, which is always so great. Such a divergence from, when John Oliver got his show, it's easy to compare it to The Daily Show, but he was always able to, at the end of every episode or thereabouts, give you give you something to do, so you don't feel as helpless as we all feel. And that's been really great. And all these shows do that now too.
He also gets to dive a lot deeper and like you feel more informed. You know? And I mean, I think it's also maybe a little less funny. At least it's not as dense with the funny. It's a little more.
It's hard to squeeze the jokes in when there's so much information. Right.
But he's also. I mean, it's very tightly curated. Like it's a different. It's definitely shows that he has time to craft it kind
Yeah.
of thing. The one thing, like the sort of antithesis to that sort of, I listen to the NPR politics podcast, and they're all like, embedded reporters, like they cover Congress, they're embedded at the White House. Like these are people who are on the ground, and I don't know why, but like it's kind of infuriating to listen to them.
Yes, I agree.
Because they are.
In fact, I stopped listening to them after the election. And then I stopped listening to them again after I started listening to them again for a month and a half.
I think I need to delete them. It's gotten to where like they do a lot of false equivalency.
Yeah. They continue to, even now.
Yep.
After seeing what that achieves.
Well, give me an example.
So
let's say, this new evidence has shown up in the Mueller investigation. But on the other side, somebody says this. It's just kind of like, you don't need to have this climate denier talk about global warming. It's not, they don't have the equal stance, but if you give them equal time, it makes
try to be balanced.
Yes. Right. Or they'll get someone on like, oh, this is our business editor. She wanted to come on and talk about net neutrality. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. This is like time to inform the people about net neutrality and how this is a really big issue. And she kind of couches as like, it's really not going to be that bad. I mean, really, businesses have to answer. And you're like, okay, I don't know whose
idea it was that this was going to be a good thing.
Right. Like this is, so they're just soft. They soft pedal a lot of
I
stuff.
feel like, I mean, from their point of view, they're just so stuck in it that they're just like, how do we make the best out of this? Instead of the Pod Save the Crooked Media people who are kind of on the outside and they're like, we're fighting as much as we can,
I think like on the media, right, and NPR politics, like basically these two podcasts who are on the media doesn't do direct coverage as much.
No, they're more like coverage.
They cover the coverage.
Yeah.
But
although they sometimes
you
tackle stuff head on.
Understand their tone and you understand their perspective and you understand that they're working to give you a balanced story. And so the balance that they provide, like basically the NPR politics people are just AP News reporting. They are not giving you, they are not filtering the information properly. And they're just giving you, this person said this and this person said this. And when they were giving opinions and giving like actual reporting on the matters, like not just AP Newswire stuff, those people's voices have been diminished in the podcast. And a lot of the stronger voices have moved on to other things. So you just kind of have these milquetoast like AP shout outs they're inoffensive unless you start to go, wait a second, you are not calling out how egregious these things are. Where you get like Bob Garfield or someone who's talking about they had I forget who had them on, but somebody had Tom Wheeler and someone else who, like a guy from Reason magazine, on to discuss the FCC net neutrality thing. And you could hear in Bob Garfield's voice the exasperation at the inanity of the guy from Reason's arguments and libertarian ideals that were coming through in his like bad faith arguments.
Yeah.
And he's still politely giving this guy a platform, but appropriately like saying with the way he's reporting it that this is not a truthful view of the situation, versus like just putting it all the ideas and angles out there, the various opinions, and saying this is the news.
Like, you can make up your mind.
Well, no. See, that's the thing that I do believe is going to change soon, and it's because it's for the kind of the worst reason of all, but it makes more interesting television. But people are going to just stop letting these people talk utter nonsense. I really feel like that people are taking cues in the news from the Fox Newses of the world and from the MSNBCs of the world, where it's just like, no, you have to stop. Nobody believes what you're saying. This is an utter lie. These are the types of things that like Jake Tapper does, and it's going to proliferate hopefully really soon, because everyone can hear it. Everybody knows it. It's just like as soon as somebody goes into this where they pivot, and it's just such a, it's so kind of a wink at the people who are moderating that they're just going to pivot on some answer to whatever they want, that I feel like the people who are the media are going to definitely start to step up and just say, that's enough.
But I think part of it, though, I feel like what those people are going to say when you have them on.
Yeah.
And so to have them on and then to rebuke them is just theater. And it's like, just stop having those people on. Don't give them a voice.
Well, then who are you going to have on?
People who don't have a voice, who should. People who are intelligent and who don't just spew bullshit.
Well, I'm 100% for that. I'm just thinking for the TV people.
So again, what you run into is what makes this person an expert on this matter. Like if they're a reporter who's in the White House who is reporting this issue, or they've like written an article about it, great. But the other side is like, who's your audience? Like most podcasts are listened to by a certain demographic of people.
Yeah.
And
is NPR
well, I'm talking about. Our discussion
It's a
has
radio
kind of
show.
worked its way into like TV media as well.
I was talking about
right.
what
Well, that's what I'm
we're
saying.
going
Like
to.
even within TV media, if CNN only had on, like basically just stopped having Kellyanne Conway and just had people reporting about it, then there's like those eyeballs that have left Fox because Fox refuses to cover any story at all sometimes.
Yeah.
Are going to come back and be like, oh, who is this New York elite journalist? Why can't we get it straight from the horse's mouth? Why can't we hear a Kellyanne Conway or a Sarah Huckabee Sanders tell us their side of the story?
Well, then they can just go and rant with their friends on Facebook. Like, like that's the thing. There's all these outlets now.
Yeah.
And the ones that are curated should not try to compete with those outlets, and they should stay curated. They should just not be like, I think part of the problem is that, a lot of those, especially when we're talking TV, is they just got to fill time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
but here's the
these
problem.
People who are like these experts are just, basically they're just available. They're TV
They're
personalities.
QVC.
Here comes my
hosts.
rant on the subject, and it goes a little something like this.
I feel like this has really gone off the rails
Yeah.
real quick.
So there are 3 major, and there are 4 24-hour news channels at least. One is even business, so 5. 5 24-hour news channels on most people's. If you have cable, you have this available to you. So this is potentially 24 hours of news every day. But the problem is that it's never news. Mm-hmm. It's always just people in a box talking to somebody else's whose head is in a box.
Yeah.
And therefore, people who have stopped reading newspapers because they're like, well, why do I need to read newspapers? There's news on all the time. There's no real news. And that's why podcasts are proliferating. There's a real hunger for real information. And I'm not saying like real information like the right wing's not giving you the news or the left. I'm saying like real tangible information. The financial crash of 2008, nobody can explain. It took a freaking movie made like 6 years later to try to kind of explain what happened.
Well, actually, there was a podcast at the time. Planet Money came out.
Well,
swinging,
that's great.
And they explained it super clearly.
Exactly. And that was a podcast. That wasn't on TV. Yeah. Instead, I don't know why they think it's cheaper to pay all these talking heads to talk when you can pay like one production company one fee to make an hour-long thing deep diving into something. Give us a deep dive into
because
that is
again
because that only fills 1 hour of airtime. Because they've
got
24
no,
hours.
but
people would rather.
But guess what? They don't care because they just rerun this stuff over and over again. So what's the problem with that?
Well, the idea is that they have their news blocks, but then they have. It's basically like a non-ending sports game.
Well, we just need to call it not news. I mean, we need to just use it what it is. It's not a news network.
No.
It's an opinion network. All of them are different opinion networks.
I wouldn't even say opinion. I would say it's just an extended non-contact sports channel where the new sports is red team versus blue team and whose team's coverage are you watching, and it plays out in real time in slow motion constantly. And it's run by commentators who are also the players who are like, so sometimes they get off the bench and actually play, and then they come back and they are commentating on the plays.
Yeah, I would argue that an hour of Radio Lab
into the analogy.
An hour of Radio Lab is most likely produced for a third of what any hour of CNN is produced at.
But then it nets.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
I would say it's close.
But if you consider, I think they spend a long time on those shows.
Sure.
And if anything, it's just because if it ends up being cheaper, it's just because they're paying themselves less.
Yeah, and they're paying themselves less, but they are informing people. They are reaching the goal of what
Right.
But
I mean,
and there's a hunger for it.
But But that's not the goal.
And people are leaving these channels. They're not watching them anymore.
The goal of a
because of
CNN
that.
is to fill airwaves to have a place for commercials to live.
Their goal is to seem like a news network, so
right,
you
to
watch
sell
it.
commercials.
well, also, I think their audience is old people.
Yes. Do you think old people don't need to be informed about what's in the
They need to be broken down into
the healthcare
soylent.
the
and
Trump
fed
Care
to us.
Act? Do you think that they don't need to know what's happening in this budget?
But again, people choose how they consume media. Like, people can read newspapers. Like, people have that choice, and they choose to watch CNN.
They don't choose. They
lot of
don't
this-
know the difference.
No, but a lot of this happens because, the reasons that this stuff has happened is because that's what draws audiences.
No,
That's-
that's
it's
not
also-
true.
It's a combination.
There's also
it's a combination.
It's also
of
a
everything.
system
Because
of
there's a lot of economics involved. That isn't about what the audience is.
Well, it's
more
also-
like what will the audience not
Put up-
leave us for?
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Well, the audience has to take the audience's stance here. They have like those older people have momentum. You know what I mean? Like they've grown up to where you had a certain set of standards for what could go on the air in terms of news standards, and those things were stripped away slowly, and like boiling a frog kind of
Right,
thing.
and now it's just down to what's familiar is a guy in a suit
Right.
talking at
because tweets,
you.
Which is
with
fine.
with a feeling of authority.
Because
But these same people grew up with Edward R. Murrow. These same people grew up with
Right.
Walter Cronkite, and all those in a lot of those during that time, like 48 Hours. It was a huge blockbuster show, and it was an hour of news. It became this weird crime show about who this guy murdered his wife. But it was but that and 60 Minutes and all these shows are real news shows
Right,
and trust me, old people love 60 Minutes.
But again, that's just the slow boil where it's like you get them hooked on the good drugs, and then you start cutting it cheap because they're hooked.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
That's what's happened.
Like so they aren't. Twitter's too hard to navigate
It's
for
just
them.
stupid, too.
I know, but it's a vehicle for reading. I
No,
mean,
it's a vehicle for disseminating a message. It's not
the
an
internet
news.
is hard. It's hard to discern and be a discerning
and that's
consumer
why,
of
why they
media.
love Facebook, because it's the easy internet.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, yeah.
You just go to one place and it's all
AOL.
Well, you
fed
guys are
to
talking to me as if we're like arguing.
No,
the
no,
same
I know.
Point.
I'm
not.
adding
I mean,
nuance. To
No,
it.
we're just coming back together.
So speaking
over
of back,
Facebook is ruining everything.
let's move to Jules. Looking back, Jules, over 2017, what stands out to you?
I think the second half of the year sped up because I was just ready to put it in my rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And I think I went deep in the first half of the year, and second half of the year I was like, you know what, like this is not doing me any good, and I really unplugged. I still I have a handful of media outlets that I check in on, but I'm definitely not day to day. I'm not touching anything that's just responding to the day's news. Like, just not touching that stuff. If I would much rather somebody digest it for a little while, and I get that version of it.
Well, don't listen to crooked media.
Okay. Yeah, no, because
Yeah.
that just it is still punditry.
It
in
just
a way,
keeps you.
know?
It just keeps your blood pressure up.
right, and the play-by-play just turns it into a game. It just can't help that.
Except, well, so yes, I agree with you 100%. Except that there are so many things, so many kind of so this presidency, and I'm going to stop ranting, but this president and his administration are doing so many weird things that would be considered like the end of it would be such an atrocity in any other era.
Yeah.
Except now it's just well, that's Tuesday, and Wednesday there's something else
Right,
crazy.
exactly.
And by continuing to kind of beat my head against the wall by listening to these things, it allows me to not forget that, oh yeah, this guy has already,
I guess I don't forget it, and it's sort of like now I know the pattern.
Well, no,
you know what I mean.
You
I know
don't
the
forget it,
patterns.
but you just, if you're not paying attention, you won't even notice the one that happened on Tuesday because the one that happened on Wednesday was just as crazy.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like after a while, you're like, okay, I get it. I get the pattern. This is just how he's, what it's going to be like, and for me to know all the nitty gritty just doesn't help me.
Yeah.
It just depresses me and it
Sure.
makes me want to do less. You know.
Well,
what
I will
mean?
tell you that the thing about the listening to Crooked Media is it's not only the daily like hit your head
Yeah.
against the wall, but they are also always interviewing people like Democrats who are doing stuff, and that's
Yeah.
always a little.
Well, and they do,
and they do CTAs. Like they're saying, you know what, this is really important right now. You
Yeah.
go to our
Yeah, but
site.
there's so
call
much
these
fatigue on
numbers.
that. I mean, for me, there's fatigue on like how many times do I got to call somebody. Like,
Well,
I just can't keep doing it.
That's the challenge. It's the same thing you're saying. You gotta. Part of these guys' job is to keep us lit up a little bit, and that's hard. It's hard to do.
I think too. It does help for me to have a spoonful of sugar with my medicine.
Yeah.
And I definitely
Then love it or leave it. It's a good one.
I like getting my news from comedians. That's
Yeah.
that's what it's come to. I mean, it started with the Daily Show, and
Yeah.
and
It's what you're familiar with, like an old person.
Exactly.
And by the
But
way,
but I think part of
the
it,
Daily Show's still really good.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I still really dialed in on that. But go ahead.
I think part of it is that because they're not the news and they don't have to be fair or they don't have to be balanced and all that stuff. In a way, like you get it with a dose of cynicism, and to me, it's more honest than the actual news. In a sense. And also, it is like, they kind of give you bad news and then throw in a laugh, and it helps it go down.
Yeah.
But
Much-
anyway,
much needed laugh break.
2017. So were we just talking generally about 2017?
Yeah,
Just stuff that you
sticks out,
would
things that you
recommend from
enjoyed.
2017.
Well, I sort of had too much. I think. Well, I'm going to stick to media because that's what we usually do on the
Yeah,
show. We'll
yeah.
get away from the politics for a minute.
Easily accessible, easily digestible.
I think some of the highlights. I think definitely like TV series are still knocking it out of the park, and I think the streaming giants have started taking over for me. I mean, it's kind of like, part of it is that's how I digest things. So maybe I'm ignoring some gems from the
major networks.
Yeah, major
cable.
networks. But most of my faves come from streamers. Like Manhunter was one of my favorites.
Mindhunter.
Yeah, Mindhunter. Thank you, not Manhunter. Mindhunter, the Netflix series
But
about serial killers.
Manhunter was also good, right? That's actually the prequel
Right.
to the Hannibal Lecter movie.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I got
Yeah.
them mixed up because
Sure.
it's same. They're all tapping from the same source material. I think Mindhunter is the most directly tapped in from the source material. Would you say that's true, John?
Well, it's based on a book, right? That's
It's based
written
on a
by
book, but
real.
it's also based on real people.
Yeah,
It's
who-
it's like a based on a true story biopic style thing where like Hannibal Lecter and all those guys and even Clarice are composites these guys are more
Well, the guys on Mindhunter are composites as well, but
Right,
they're
but
more closely.
they're more like
from the
they're
book.
composites that are almost more like shades of actual people.
Yeah.
Like recast and renamed
Yeah.
a little bit versus like
Just to make it
Clarice
dramatic.
is basically all these people combined or something.
Anyway, I really dug it. I think *Handmaid's Tale* was also like I really dug that. Thought it was great.
That's a Hulu,
Yeah, that was on a Hulu exclusive.
and
then I think
Mindhunters from Netflix.
Mhm.
yep. And then from Amazon, I think *Transparent* is still
yeah.
great. I came into this season like I was like I don't know
Is
if
this
they can
3?
still do it, and I think this might have been 4.
Oh,
I think this might have been 4.
Wow.
And I actually think this one was one of the better seasons. I really thought, and especially because they were doing the whole Israel thing, I was like, I don't know, man, that seems risky. And there were a couple episodes that were a little like, oh, we're gonna go to Israel, and we're gonna show you the Israel you don't see in the news, and we're gonna be talking to a bunch of hip pro-Palestinians at a dinner, and like there were a couple episodes where the politics felt a little forced. It felt a little like it was preaching, but most of the season was really solid and really like just good stuff. And I thought it's got a little less, like like more heart this season. I don't know. And
Well, what do you think? I mean, looking forward, what do you? I think Tambor's leaving. What do you think's going to happen?
for real.
For real? I mean, he certainly said that.
Well, I mean,
there
are
was
they
some
still doing
allegations of
episodes?
sexual misconduct,
Uh-huh.
and he was just like, "If the show's going to pull this baloney, I'm off." I mean, I don't know other than just the headline that I read, but
Yeesh.
Right. So he was denying stuff, but how is that related to the show, or was it just that
he's leaving the show.
he's leaving the show? But is that
Yeah.
because from pressures related to the allegations? or-
I'm not certain, but he was just like,
But they were definitely planning another season.
I mean, I think so. He said he's leaving the
Interesting.
show. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, it to me, I kind of like want it to end soon. Like I think it's
Yeah.
the kind of show that I think it just works better as a miniseries kind of vibe. But I don't know. Like I said, last season was great. I think also I got the feeling that Jill Soloway, like I think she started a new show. Got the feeling she was kind of like from the credits. It seems she's pulled away a little bit. It's kind of like doing its own thing now. Set a clear enough vision for the show and the characters that now like other writers are taking over. And I think that maybe like signaled a little bit of the shift. And I don't think it was for the worst.
So in a perfect world, the show would just be like, "That's it, y'all, we did it," and be done.
Maybe one more. Wrap it
Okay.
up. Wrap it up.
Like the season with a purpose to wrap it up.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. That's what I would like to see. But I don't know. I sort of
But
also
Jules' life doesn't get wrapped up in
That's
a
true.
nice
Not
shiny
so simple.
package, does it?
This was kind of the year of documentaries in a lot of ways, just because that was my new thing.
It's because every freaking pick you brought was a documentary. Yeah, got it.
Well, and that was just because I was immersing myself in that world. I'm starting to
You
work.
brought us along for the
That's
ride.
right. I'm starting to work on the documentary now, and so I thought I'd talk some highlights in that area. In terms of to start with TV, or sort of like there was an HBO miniseries called The Defiant Ones. Which is actually like it's not great, mostly because I feel like the subjects aren't that. It's Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine,
Yeah.
and it kind of glorifies them to a certain degree, and all their associates, which is pretty star-studded, like Eminem and
Tom Petty,
yeah,
Bruce Springsteen. Yeah.
so it's star-studded, and it's a little bit of a
9 Inch Nails, don't forget.
yeah, and so I thought what was amazing about it is, I mean, when I think about that, that's pretty lame. Like the content, if you really think about it, was pretty lame. But like the people who put it together, and I wish I'd written their names down because I didn't, really elevated the material. You know what I mean? I watched all 4 episodes, even though I didn't care that much, and I was often kind of like rolling my eyes a little bit and kind of judging them a little bit. And I was like, oh, you're throwing them a softball here. Like it was definitely like very glorifying them.
Yeah.
But I just had to admire how well it was executed.
Well, the takeaway for me was just that like its reach. So many. I mean, to me, not since like the Civil War by Ken Burns had so many people. No, I mean,
Yeah.
had so many people been talking about a documentary.
Yeah,
I mean, it was everybody was talking about it.
and I think it's a lot of it was the editing. I think it was edited brilliantly, and they did a lot of things. I'd maybe seen before, but they really sold them. Like this, they did this thing where they would have 2 different interviews, and they would edit them in such a way to kind of imply a crosstalk. Like one
Yeah.
person was talking about another, and they would cut to that person. I think it was just a bit of the interview where they were listening to the question, but
Yeah.
the way it was cut, it just felt like they were reacting to what the other person was said, or that they were, so they just did all these subtle things.
Made it conversational.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know. There were just so many, and that was just one of many little things that
The
made
thing
it shine.
that I took out of it that I thought was interesting is that a lot of people ended up coming out of here thinking like these guys are so good. They're so nerdy. Both
Yes.
of those guys are
Yes,
such
totally.
nerds.
Totally.
But I mean, the work is better because they are such nerds. But
Yeah.
but it was like a really really eye opening about Jimmy Iovine. I did not know he had his hands in so many things that I loved.
Yeah, and it kind of made like them ending up at Apple, like it felt a little bit more earned,
Yeah.
like in some sense.
Instead of like, oh, these guys made some headphones.
right.
Yeah. Right.
They were savvy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that that's coming off the heels. Like there were some pretty major documentary series that like.
Oh yeah, it's just because we're limited to this year.
No,
Yeah.
I know, but I mean, like within this year, there were a lot of like
S-Town,
spiritual
right?
successors of Making a Murderer. Like you had The Keepers, and
Yes.
you had like a bunch of shows. Like true crime, of course, like gets people in pretty big.
Mhm.
I still haven't watched Vietnam, like new Ken Burns.
I have not either.
Epic.
I didn't need to watch it. I lived it.
Yeah.
It was called Platoon.
I've heard some.
And I
some
didn't live
mixed
it. I
stuff
just
on
watched it
so
on
I'm
VHS.
interested though.
In Vietnam.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm too. I'm a little like I am curious to see how Ken Burns handles subject matter that's that's so close to us historically,
Mhm.
where people are still alive to talk about it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like
You know what I bet? I bet she does a great job.
maybe he does, but I feel like it's a little messier.
Have you ever watched a Ken Burns thing where you're just like, that just didn't do it for me? The answer is no.
Well,
Some
He
are more
sucks you
boring
in.
than others.
He sucks you into everything. He could do a whole thing about the history of the spatula, and you'd be in. I'm telling you, the guy is really knows what he's doing. Ken Burns. Love you, Ken.
That being said, like I'm a big Civil War guy, and so you kind of have to look back. Like again, we talked about this on the other like.
You mean you're a big fan of the Civil War documentary?
The Civil War documentary,
yeah,
well, and the Civil War, like
you're a fan of the Civil War.
I'm a fan of it.
Gotcha.
I'm a fan of that period of history and looking at that like bloody weird time, and it's especially in a time when a lot of people are figuring out where our values lie, and there are a lot of sea changes. It's interesting to look at one of the big ones that we still are dealing with, a lot of this stuff in terms of how we deal with minorities and
all of it.
Yeah.
Still dealing with all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
A war didn't
the Reformation that never came. So, but it's interesting, like to go back and go like, how was he manipulating us with that documentary? Like, how was he using Shelby Foote when people talk about like he made this?
Why do you got to go so nefarious? Like he is using it
because they all are.
Because the thing is,
they all are.
But the idea.
So you think like he's like, I'm gonna make these people think that the Civil War was a good thing.
No, I think
that'll do it. Then they'll be entertained for weeks.
There's a pretty big contingent.
I'm gonna cherry pick the best handwritten letters.
No,
just so people can realize how shitty the war was.
That's for sure. That is very true.
Of course, it's true.
And I'm gonna have really cool actors.
But the other side of it, what I'm getting at is there's a contingent of thought on the Civil War that the South was fighting for its own survival and that it wasn't inherently about slavery and the oppression of a people.
You think that documentary was kind of playing that down?
He was. When we're in a year where they're tearing down statues and having torch wielding alt-right shit people activists walking around talking about their heritage and people flashing Confederate flags, that's when you have to look and go, okay, Shelby Foote lauds Lincoln, but Shelby Foote sheds tears for Lee as well in the same documentary. So there's a little bit of having having it both ways in that.
And I think there's room to have it both ways when referring to Robert E. Lee. But at the same time, there's a really famous quote where Robert E. Lee actually says there should be no monuments to the antebellum South. There should be no. He himself said after the war said there should be no monuments to the Civil War South. Like he says it'll only like prolong America's wound or scars or something.
Well, I guess my thought there is that Shelby Foote's tears to Robert E. Lee's memory is one of those monuments. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't just to the people watching. You have a man with a Southern drawl and a friendly attitude and atmosphere talking about boys on both sides. It softens the edge
and it's building the mythology.
Right.
I'm not going to defend the Civil War. It's fine. it takes care of itself.
Well, it's not the Civil War that you need to defend, Keith. It's the South.
Well, I will say this, though. What the Civil War did, what it achieved, is showing that for some people it wasn't a choice. You couldn't if you were born in Mississippi that's easy. There's really no choice if you're a black person born in Mississippi. So this is me downplaying that, but if you were born in Mississippi and you were, a poor white kid, you didn't have a choice. You couldn't choose to not fight.
This is many wars are in that.
It's
all about where you are when
it's a rich
and
man's war.
I think that was more what Shelby Foote was trying to get at. But anyway, we're debating the Civil War. Civil War happened. How did we get here? People died.
That was not in 2017's, just to clarify.
Ken Burns
but
really can make a documentary.
Neither the documentary series nor...
Holt seems to think that Ken Burns has got some axe to grind.
And also, we're talking about this, but none of us have seen Vietnam. So I don't know why we're spending so much time on this.
Well, I will say that the section on Rambo in the Vietnam War thing is pretty touching. I shed a tear for Rambo and the sheriff that tries to do him wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea Rambo was alive back then.
He was John Rambo at the time.
He came back. He came back from Vietnam
to find out his friend had cancer and died of cancer.
And then they didn't want his kind in the town. And that's when all
gotcha.
Shit
we were talking about Vietnam, not the Civil War. It makes more sense now.
David Caruso had to come and put handcuffs on.
But I guess what I'm saying is we have to in an age, we need to be careful about who is feeding us our information, even if they're documentarians.
Especially if they're documentarians. But what I like is I feel like there's been like the documentary genre, and I think genres are kind of problematic in general. Like you end up with, like animated films or have their own category, and they can never win Best Picture, and documentaries, can win Best Documentary, but they can never win Best Picture because they're documentaries, and it just sets these audience expectations, and it just kind of doesn't allow for films to be somewhere in the middle. And I feel
now who's grinding an axe now, right, John?
Ching, ching.
Am I right?
But I feel like, documentaries and I mean, film in general there's been a lot of genre bending films, and I feel like
why don't we make a best genre bending category?
But I think. I think part of that is that, like, I think audiences also, like, as the audiences get more savvy and evolved as well, like, we kind of want to be surprised again. And that's another way to do it is, when you break genre conventions, you break audience expectations, things like that. But anyways.
And the winner for best animated docudrama with a dark twist that turns out all right is...
Oh, so good. But so on that note, there have been really interesting documentaries that kind of blur the lines and that don't try to be, that are kind of dispelling that myth that, that documentaries are 100% truthful. And, I mean, I think it started with this idea of cinema verite, that like documentaries were like this purist thing, but really they're always manipulated and they're always edited and so forth, etc. But this year, an interesting one I saw, which was released on Netflix, was called Casting JonBenet. It's basically they wanted to look at the JonBenet Ramsey case, which was from back in the 80s and was a huge case. And now it's sort of like a lot of time has gone by and sort of you can look at it through different eyes. And they did this interesting thing where they put on the filmmakers put on a play about the case. And they cast from the town where it originally took place, and part of their casting process, they essentially interviewed everyone, and essentially it was like the people who came forward wanting to play parts in this, had connections to the case, personal connections to the case, and also were kind of some of them just weird, eccentric people, and they also you intercut that, and they also show the making of the play, and they intercut scenes that they're acting out, and it was just a super interesting format, and it was an interesting look back at this case that was in the news back in the day.
I guess we've kind of officially reached the point where we're old because
yes.
all these things that were notorious during my late teens,
no one remembers,
mid-teens. Are now suddenly being kind of rehashed, like the O.J. Simpson movie,
yes.
the Menendez brothers movie.
Yes.
There's a movie about Tanya Harding,
which looks great, by the way,
and the JonBenet Ramsey thing. I'm just waiting for the Maria Bobbitt stuff to happen.
And in a way, I mean, it is, I'm sure it's easier to get funding for these things because just like anything else, it's like people have heard of it and stuff.
People are nostalgic.
But these are like...
And the O.J. Simpson thing was really successful.
And true crime has got,
not just successful, but...
huge.
Yeah.
True crime is really... Like, again, Making of a Murderer shows that. There's the S-Town, Serial, all this stuff. Like, we have a prison industrial complex where... what large percentage of our citizenry lives in prison and just,
and I think,
great.
And I think that's always there, but I think it is nice to have, in a way, to have like these really thoughtful like pieces that really make you think deeper about what, especially looking back, about what did these things symbolize and what did they say about us, and
about
how did
time.
And how did it affect people? So it's
right. Making O.J. Simpson
way more interesting.
It did deserve to win for that category,
yeah.
even though it wasn't technically a movie.
Even though it cheated.
Best crime reenactment drama about a football star that was a TV movie in multiple parts but has been cheated in theaters goes to O.J. Simpson. All right, so... But the good thing is, like, they tied it into events of today, like, that have continued to boil up, like, how black people are treated in America and what is the role of an activist? What is the role of, we had this thing about OJ, and part of that whole discussion was this is a guy who was apolitical and was getting called out for not being a Muhammad Ali, for not taking his platform and going out there.
Helping people with it.
But then
But then people found out he was a murderer, and they were like, "Oh yeah, well, I guess that's okay." Then.
Well, no, but when they found out he's a murderer, he used
then all of a sudden
race to work like all the arguments that he could, basically he then became someone on the platform kind of thing. And in a time when our president is shitting on a football star for protesting the treatment of black people in our country.
America,
Yeah, and in like such a small way. I don't know.
Yes, but it's
Anyway.
interesting. That's where it's kind of thing. Like again, taking these moments of the recent past and tying them to our current situation. Yeah. That's kind of interesting because it's closer to us than like the civil rights protests of the '60s to some degree. Whereas like
definitely chronologically closer.
But in terms of like we have more material from that time, it was a phenomena. And how does that reflect on how we are today and where we've come today?
More like media, how the media is today.
But also like how we treat people, how our law enforcement people react, how we've trained people, how we sell things, all that stuff is changed.
I think, like I'm reflecting on all the things we're talking about, and I think 2017 was definitely a year of like national reflection, where, I think the Trump thing was very disruptive and made certainly everybody on the left, question a lot of everything in a sense or reassess. And I think it also activated a lot of people. And now it's sort of starting with Weinstein, like the Me Too, the whole Me Too thing.
Right. Which was also a black rights activists platform was the Me Too, that it was started like I want to say 10 years ago or even earlier. But it's an existing message. For that was specifically about the voice of minority and women of color, people of color, and how they're treated in the society.
But yes, so I think, it's been a good thing in a lot of ways. I mean, it's too bad that it had to happen the way that it did, but I think it's good to shake things up.
Yeah,
a lot. It's certainly. It's good to shake a lot of these things out of the shadows, I guess.
And like I was saying, they're interesting conversations because the things were so hidden for so long. We have like
they weren't hidden. That's the whole point.
Well, some of them they kind of were. I think they were like sort of quietly tolerated.
Right, but there's also
I think we're all realizing, we can't do that.
Well, but part is like we weren't talking about it is the idea. And because we weren't talking about it, we didn't really have good words for it. So it's sort of like now there's discussions. The women who actually came up with the phrase sexual harassment back around Clarence Thomas time or whatever, they were generating that word. What does that word mean? What actions does that cover? And then we have words like sexual assault. What does that mean? It can be anything from a grope to a rape. Now, how do we like get in there and have real conversations about these things and like...
How much of it can you do and still be a senator?
Yeah, right? Well, thankfully, hopefully not much. The important part of it, though, is that it'll get talked about. The behavior will be, put out there as like, you can't do this stuff. Just because no one talks about it doesn't,
Well, not to bring it back to politics, but an interesting thing that I find is the big like dam breaking. I feel like was Harvey Weinstein. That we'd had the Cosby stuff, and for some reason it didn't move the needle. But maybe it did enough to make the Harvey Weinstein thing have legs. Right. But since then, thank goodness, people have been brave enough to come forward with their stories, and it's making a lot of bad people like not sleep at night. Thank goodness.
I think that the fact that Trump, an avowed sexual assaulter, like a braggart about it, on tape, was still elected to the highest office in this country. That was like, because it's one thing to take like an old icon like Bill Cosby and basically have him recontextualized as the monster that he is, and to lose all that. That's one thing, but to know what this person is,
well,
where
I was getting at with this is that
he's in the highest office
of all these major shakeups. Pretty much only two people have flatly kind of ignored the allegations and claimed that they have done nothing wrong, and it's Trump and Moore.
Yeah.
and everyone else has given out nice apology letters, blah blah blah, or nice in air quotes.
They've acknowledged some responsibility,
right. And they are the only ones who are kind of paying the price. Meanwhile, Trump, who has never gotten any blowback for the statements he he was caught bragging about, and more, might still be a senator.
I mean, the thing is, he did get blowback. The problem is he doesn't care, right? Like it just to me, it just shows just how.
Well, no.
he is.
Whether he cares or not, it doesn't matter. His voters didn't care.
Right. That's the bigger issue.
Right, but the thing is, if he had shown remorse and he had apologized, etc., like if he had cared, then his voters would have had to be like, oh, he really did something bad.
Yeah.
Whereas him vehemently denying it or whatever, they can just it's this reality distortion.
Go
thing.
along with the story.
Right. Or they can
Keep
can
their
take
worldview.
they can choose to accept the spin.
Yeah.
Whereas if the person pleads guilty, then you can't really spin it. You have to be like, well, I mean, you can still personally, like, you would let him off the hook if you were his juror. You know what I mean? You could still you could decide for yourself that is or isn't a crime, even though he's pleading guilty to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we started a kind of like a Deadpool at work, except instead of a Deadpool,
cesspool?
yeah, it's a cesspool for who's going to be the next person to fall. It seems silly to trivialize it, but I still can't help but wonder, like, who's next.
I mean,
That's not trivializing it in a way. It's just kind of I don't know. It's starting to look around and think, analyze.
Yeah.
And be like, who.
Well, because
Who do I suspect?
Yeah.
And who probably, where there's smoke, there's probably fire.
Well, there's those pretty heavy stats of X in 5 women have been sexually assaulted,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And you go, man, that's really high, because wouldn't you see more people getting in trouble for that? And it's like, oh, they weren't getting in trouble for it because it's just as a society,
the system's working for them.
We've turned our eyes away, and we've, instead of saying,
not even it doesn't even.
We've
get
also
to our
we spend
eyes.
too
That's
much time
the real tragedy.
talking about this statistic and if it's real, and not saying what's at the heart of the well, let's go find these people who are perpetrating this thing.
Yeah. In a way, I think what's good about this wave is that I think more and more victims can come out because each one as an individual is diluted. Whereas before, each new case was kind of isolated, and each victim who came out to speak out was, really put out there and had to individually face that attention.
Well, not only individually face that attention, but there was so much more scrutiny added to their story. It was like
Anita Hill
Right.
is
they were
subject
they
number
were the
one.
ones who were guilty until proven innocent.
Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
Again, another person who was just vilified for being a young woman who was taken advantage of by someone who was in a position of power over her. Regardless of what, it takes two to tango, whatever, she is not in a position to really question or
the other problem is that was heavily politicized
Right.
as well. And so that everyone was manipulated in that situation, whether or not they chose to, So that was, and again, it's but now that it's part of this tidal wave, it's sort of you're paying attention more to the person being outed than the individual victims, which, I think makes it easier for them to come out.
And it makes it easier for the victims to come forward because they're not. It's not like, oh, we know who Anita Hill's name is. We don't know the dozens of people who came out against Harvey Weinstein. You know what I mean? Right. And I think that that's good for them because it doesn't make their life all about that.
Right. And that's the problem. And that's the reason that so many people don't come out is because it's traumatic for them, and they don't want to face all these other repercussions.
Right. Well, and
there's a myriad of reasons,
and some
or to be humiliated or ignored, or would be even worse.
And the other big aspect is they don't come out because they go, well, this is how it is,
or it's just
what
am I going to do? Find a new job? Find a different job, change my whole life. There's a myriad of reasons that 3 dudes don't need to be talking about.
Right. Exactly. There's and my last kind of take on it is it's gonna get real bad. Basically, we're going to have to cauterize the wound, and that's going to kill a lot of flesh or cut off the limb kind of thing. It's going to be the cure is going to be painful because it's going to be a generational change where it's going to take education.
You say cauterize the wound. I say rip off the Band-Aid. And I say fuck all those guys because you knew what you were doing. Just don't act like you're a part of some wave. You're a fucking creep.
No, but what I mean is all those people are going to get kicked off their jobs or kicked off their shows.
Hopefully.
Or step down.
Maybe not.
Or step down. but those shows will do the right thing and close the show if they do the right thing, right? And the people who worked on those shows will lose their jobs, and there'll be another victim.
And they'll all be replaced by Sean Hannity.
Well, but those people will be another set of victims to. No, but what I'm saying is there are more victims to the person who
claim to be victims.
No. Not claiming to be victims. I'm saying that if you are one of the guys on the Nickelodeon show that this guy was producing,
I hear what you're saying.
and you lose your job because that show is canceled, or you're not on the next House of Cards.
I thought you were talking about the guy accused.
No, the guy accused is victimizing you. Has victimized you, not in a sexual way, but by abusing their station and abusing someone else in order, like they've committed. That's another aspect of their crime.
By abusing their power and being irresponsible, they put the whole
team at risk.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
The whole project.
But 2017, y'all. Yeah.
Woo!
Let's shake them trees and get rid of those.
2008
bad fruits.
I didn't even get to movies.
Yeah, let's hear some movies.
I guess I talk about some Maggie Mary movies.
Let's hear some.
Well, I mentioned Jane, I think, last show. I still think it was one of the better documentaries I saw in the theater, which is about Jane Goodall. I thought that was great. Get Out was great and timely, I think. But also just a fun movie. I think I reached superhero fatigue in 2017. Yeah. I think the only one I saw in the theater was Wonder Woman. Was that even 2017?
It was,
yep.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And whatever, it was fine. But I just wasn't like, I was like a bunch of them, like Logan. Like I guess I kind of wish I'd seen Logan. That one looked like the most interesting one, but Keith's shaking his head no.
Ragnarok was just a slog. It was
that's not true. I also saw the Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
But even the other ones that I'm sure they're fine, like Thor and stuff, but I just wasn't like...
It's a popcorn movie.
Just wasn't motivating me,
Thor was great. But you were right to be blah about... That's the thing we have to keep in mind. Like, a lot of these movies are still pretty crappy. So it's hard to...
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of separate the wheat from the shaft. Is that the...
Wheat from the chaff,
yeah. Chaff, yeah.
I think for a while I was just kind of like, I don't know, there was still some novelty to superhero
compulsion.
Movies.
I still have a compulsion. I mean, I don't watch them in the theater a lot of times, but I will watch every single superhero movie, even knowing that I know Suicide Squad is going to be crappy. I just don't, but I'm going to watch it.
Well, see, I've stopped doing that.
See, that's why I know, like, I have that sort of completionist, perfectionist addiction, where, like, that's whenever comics started getting too much, like, you need to buy every issue of every comic book that we currently have out to get the whole story. Once it becomes that, I walk out. Like, I stop buying comics.
Because you can't possibly
because
otherwise you have to buy them all.
I want to enjoy the story. And if
it's almost like trying to catch every Pokemon. Like, John just walks right out.
And that may be,
he's not going to eat that many cheeseburgers.
And that may be the flaw in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that you don't really feel like you can just watch one movie. And it's like once I've missed a couple, I'm like, I'm out of the loop.
I will go to bat for Marvel right now because I will say,
well, they're still doing the best.
They're rich. They are rich, and if you feel like you need to watch everyone, you will gain from that. But you can watch Spider-Man and not have watched any of the others.
But Spider-Man,
and you can watch Thor Ragnarok and not have seen any of the others. They put the flashbacks in there for you. All these movies do stand alone.
Yeah.
The question is, like,
but
are you afraid you're going to miss some Easter eggs?
I think Infinity Gauntlet and what's it, Civil War, like, it's just
even Civil War set on its own. I mean, you can watch these without.
I'm sure you can, but I think it's what John was talking about. I think I do have that completionist thing where if I'm watching a movie and I know there's a bunch of references and I'm like, I probably should have watched that other one.
Right, like here's a cameo within a cameo. And honestly, I'm worried that Star Wars is going to go down the same road, it's like here's this trilogy, and here's our sideways trilogies, and here's an off on the alternate side trilogy.
Although I don't yet suffer Star Wars fatigue. I'm not there yet. I think I got a few more years in me.
I'm
excited about the next one.
I wouldn't have been fatigued if they didn't release the same movies 4 fucking times. It's like I'm ready. I'm ready for the next one.
The
2 most recent movies are just such like rehashings where I'm just like, come on, man, you got to come out with something new. This is such.
But why fuck with the formula, Keith?
Exactly,
but
because
Keith, to me, it's just like it's what Lucas was trying to do with the special editions, except it doesn't feel so dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you're making it all modern and pretty, but you're not ruining the original.
If he had done it more with the prequels, would we have thought they were good?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely we would have. That's all people wanted.
Yeah, if if the first prequel was just A New Hope but repackaged,
Totally.
we would have loved it.
I mean, I would have loved it.
I think
or at least I would have been like, well, it's not new, but it's still good.
But I kind of feel though, like, so, all right, like those new Star Trek movies where they're basically like rebooting the world, right? Mm-hmm. They're not super successful, but if someone was to say to me, look, these new Star Wars movies are basically just reboots with like a, technically it's not the same exact story, but it's just a reboot. Like you're basically watching a 30-year-old movie brought to modern day with good acting,
like
new
Evil
effects.
Dead and Evil Dead 2.
Correct.
Yeah.
If someone told you that Rogue One and Star Wars Episode 14 or whatever the last one was are just new, like that's the new Star Wars and you can ignore the rest, it's like watching old Star Trek or something, then, or I don't know, I don't even know what like equivalent or like old Doctor Who.
Maybe because it's been a series, like for some reason we accept that a lot more with Star Trek. Maybe it's because there's been a bunch of different series and it's been kind of rebooted or the next thing, and for some reason, and I think that is kind of what's happening with Star Wars. But
it's not. I mean, they're trying to call it. They're calling it a continuity, but think of it. If you think of it as not a continuity, that's where you can also enjoy it.
I think of it as a money grab. Well, imagine this for you for just a second. So when in the 90s,
it's also fan service. They want it.
In the last 8, they want it because it's the only thing they're
given.
But
the episodes 1, 2, and 3, those were money grabs.
If you get,
if you were to
think about in the late 80s when somebody was given a chance to make new Star Trek, they decided to make something new, which was Star Trek: The Next Generation. It was the same ship. It was like in the future, but it turned into such a rich, great thing that all of us have been influenced by. And it created its own legacy of spin-offs and new stories. This is the opportunity that they're missing with the new Star Wars stuff. It's just like, instead of taking a chance and trusting an artist to make something good, they're just like, just put a different mask on the thing.
The thing is, right now, but the reason that had to happen is right now they're repairing the damage that George Lucas did. That's what this is about. These are making amends for George Lucas.
If that were true,
that's why they could take no risks here. They had to give the fans what they wanted.
And I'm
really glad
hear
that
what
they
you're
did.
saying,
and I'm really glad that they did.
and I feel sad that's the mentality for making art.
But the thing is, like Ryan was it Ryan?
I don't remember.
The guy who's directing the
Bryan Singer.
No,
he just
what is his name?
He just got fired off of it.
No, not him.
Bryan Singer.
No.
James Earl Jones. J.J. Abrams.
Anyway,
Louis Gossett
there's
Jr.
a guy. There's the director of Episode 7 just got greenlit to do his own trilogy, and I think that's going to be what you wanted. It's going to be a new set of stories in the Star Wars universe. I think that's going to be kind of the next generation.
Set aside in a way. I mean, there might be. I mean, it's still the same world, but it's not.
And I think too, like Disney. I think with Marvel and stuff, like I think they're just really into interconnecting everything right now and creating a universe. So I think, there probably will be some of that stuff.
I feel like Rogue One was there, like dipping the toe in the water of that. And they have that, like the Rebels cartoon is doing that very successfully, like telling a story outside of the thing, sort of like it's like parallel-ish, and it'll get tied back in at some point. But, they're doing a successful job. I think you have there's a camp quality to the original trilogy that they're still fun, good movies. They're better than the Star Trek movies for the most part.
But they're not high art.
But they're not. Yeah, they're like campy, and I think that they're trying to bring modern production qualities to something.
I believe that you could consider them high art. I mean,
they're like a great pop song.
Sure, but there comes a time with it. There comes a point when it's reached a certain level of cultural immersion that it becomes art. It becomes a Grecian urn. It becomes Hercules.
I think it becomes more of that like pop art Tootsie Roll collage that one guy had with the Tootsie Pops and the Muscle Men in a old
cool.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Mid-century.
Yep. Everybody knows about.
You're right, Holt. It is that thing.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But anyway,
it's called pop art.
We might have to amend this podcast in a couple weeks because the new one's coming out.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to.
That's coming out in like just a couple weeks.
10 days.
10 days.
Show going to be up after that, probably.
Yes, it's so we'll have.
Sorry.
Maybe we'll have a thing inserted right here.
Well, so we'll see what the penguins have to say about it. We'll come back and.
What do you mean?
There's penguins, like Jar Jar Binks penguins in the new
Really?
Star Trek.
Is there really in the new Star Wars?
In the new Star Trek.
Oh yeah, whatever. It's all the same to me.
I don't know what he's
It's
talking
all
about.
blurred. I'll show you guys on the trailer. It's fine. So anything else, Jules, that stands out?
Yeah, there was more stuff, but I've talked long enough.
All right.
And luckily, because of the such great forward thinking of this show, we do the What's New to You every week, and that kind of covers a lot of those things.
Yeah,
It's true.
My looking back over the year, I moved into a new place. I've talked about that. So kind of like now that's home. We're settled in there. Got art up on the walls just in early December, right around like just after the end of Thanksgiving. Kind of christened it, had like a pseudo housewarming cartoon and cereal party.
And it was very warm.
Yeah.
And it was so much cereal. It was amazing.
It really was.
And I think that might be a new like monthly tradition, just so that the cereal doesn't go bad.
I support this.
Yes.
Cereal lasts a long time though. It's like expiration date is well into a year.
It's,
or
it's
so
like
good
it's
about it.
mostly sugar and preservatives. It's
Right.
interesting.
Who knew that a box full of dry grain goods could last a long time?
Yeah, so I guess the big stuff my big takeaway is like we went to a lot of Alamo movies. I've talked about that stuff. Mostly, I think like meeting new people, starting a new podcast, playing a lot of games, going to Gen Con again. Like all that stuff was really fun.
Oh yeah, I didn't talk about Seafall. That was a big part of
Yeah,
my year.
Seafall was a huge thing this year. I'll go into that a little bit. So we played this legacy game, Seafall, and we were meeting for a while, like almost every Sunday early on, maybe every other Sunday.
I think every other Sunday.
And playing this game, and we had a pretty big break between the last few games and the last couple games, something like that.
Yeah, I think late summer, early fall was disruptive.
Yeah.
So just as a person who's never played Seafall, is it at all related to the fact that it sounds like a James Bond
No.
title?
No, it's more like you have, the real basics are you have a map and you have a bunch of provinces. And,
Cool, got it. Sounds like an awesome game.
And you have boats and you are exploring the unexplored seas. And
Yeah, sort of like each player, it represents a kingdom, and it's colonial. It's like you're going off, you're sending your ships off to make colonies and to make new discoveries to enrich your homeland.
And there's great secrets to the world. And it's a legacy game in that you write on the cards. So like when you have your province, you name your province and you name the lord of your province or lady
right on the
province.
board.
Right on
there,
the
you
board.
write it on there. You
And
put
as
a
you-
sticker
with a
on it.
Sharpie? Like,
Yeah.
will it stay?
Yeah.
Permanent.
What?
Permanent. And then you'll
What if you misspell it?
And then you tear
that's
off.
it,
You
yeah.
tear up cards.
tear up cards,
my
all
goodness.
kinds of stuff. And so the
and,
board
and the
sounds
rules
wasteful.
and the rules of the game change over time because you unlock new secrets.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
and the big
Actually,
I
I
think
do believe I remember
Yeah,
you guys
we talked
talking
about
about
it.
this.
So-
But I'm not saying that to
Right.
derail you.
I
make
think
you
we
stop talking
played
about it.
I feel like it was like 16 games. No, maybe I think it was 16 or 17 games all told.
16, yeah.
16 games. So and every other week.
So who won?
I do.
Jules
All
won.
right,
Jules
Jules.
won, but someone else hit one of the win conditions.
Oh, hard for him to just say that I won.
Jules
Give
won.
it to me.
Jules won. He
Well, it
did
didn't
very
really
good.
matter that much. But yeah, it's funny because at the end of it, like I think we all enjoyed it and had fun, but we were all kind of like, this game wasn't that good.
Yeah.
Really?
I think that
Huh.
the best way to play the game would be for someone who has played it before to curate, like to
Make
to-
a couple
to
rules to make it.
not even make rules, just
Clarify things along
clarify,
the way.
like basically, what is it called? Like facilitate the game. So they'd be the one to kind of like set,
Kind of like a guide.
Yeah, you just need someone to set things up and keep things moving and tell you this is what these rules mean. You don't need to worry about that. Keep going. And because there are a lot of times,
what does this mean? Should we have done this? Was that right?
right?
like-
And also someone to tell you like that based on the way that this rule works, this is not a strategy kind of thing. Like there are certain
Yeah.
things that like
there's some
let's
dead
make
ends.
this-
Stop shipping so many pineapples. It's not
Right,
going to help you
right,
in the
exactly.
end. Got it.
so basically someone to make the rules very clear in plain language.
The only way to win is to give out smallpox
Yeah.
blankets.
Mhm.
That's it.
And we were reflecting on it afterwards. We're like, well, I guess in their defense, it is hard to play test a game that takes,
36 weeks.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Well,
it
you know.
took 16 games, and each game was 4 to 5 hours.
Right.
So,
Wow.
But which
Do
was
the math.
also because of a misreading of the rules in the beginning, we always
right,
had a
that's
very
right.
slow first turn that lasted a good part of an hour and a half of our game.
I totally forgot
So
about that.
so it was
That'll do it.
It there was definitely like we had
So it's all your fault.
we had
Your
bl-
guys' fault. It
Well,
actually
It's
turns
also
out
the fault of the
the
game
game
makers.
it's-
There's a lot of a lot of the rules are unclear.
I think
and
every game
confusing.
would still last 2 to 3 hours, so you'd be looking at
There was also a lot of drinking and chatting, and
Right.
we weren't like, okay, let's get this over with.
Mhm.
We're having a good time.
right.
Yeah.
So it's still like 32 to 48 straight hours of game if you were to play it like wall to wall.
Yeah.
And that's pretty brutal.
And I think what was really nice about it is is that commitment to just like, hey, we're gonna meet for 4 or 5 hours, like like regularly,
Mhm.
same group of people, and doing the same thing, and that
Drink
just
some beers.
yeah, just that kind of like extended
camaraderie.
camaraderie and extended commitment to a thing, even though it wasn't a great game. Like I still think back on the experience fondly,
Yeah.
and so it kind of so it was nice.
Right. And we actually had a party of people. So that's the other kind of highlight. Like I've been spending time at the Hinterlands, running games there on Tuesdays.
It's a
Become
bar
buddies
in
with those
Kensington,
guys.
Brooklyn.
It's a bar. That's where we play Seafall. Our friend Stuart Wellington owns the bar with his wife Charlene there.
And they've set up a place for people to play these types of games,
Yep, you can
which
play-
is cool.
Yeah,
And you might also buy some drinks while you're there.
totally. I mean, you
So
should.
it's a win-win situation.
Exactly. So it's been a highlight, like getting out on Tuesdays as much as I can and helping run and play games. Like it's good to have a base kind of thing.
Yeah, that's one thing. Just as an outsider looking in, I think it's really cool. A cool new facet to your schedule. I think it's kind of neat, and just seeing all the kind of new friends pop up in your circle through that, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's like I expanded out a little bit this year.
Mhm.
Again, new neighborhood, just kind of like having a watering hole. All that stuff is good. And then also like just projects. Like I made my Halloween costume this year. I curated that Saturday morning cartoon cereal breakfast thing.
Set up the cards thing for the.
Set up the cards thing for the Flophouse
Started
guys.
a new podcast.
Started a new podcast. Continued doing Board Ghost and this podcast. Like, the new project is really fun too because like the surprising thing is the interviews and how that was sort of like a
kind of an
it was
afterthought.
like
that
something.
became
Yeah, it was like an afterthought that became one of the more like enriching. And it's hard. It's hard to book people, but you get to. There's no pressure to it, and it's interesting to think about how you interview someone and
That's cool.
how you get what you want to talk about out of them, kind of thing. So.
The secret is you got to find guests who need to push something.
Mm-hmm.
Need
You
to
need to get some
promote books.
pluggers.
Tappers.
Plug away.
They need to start like reading new upcoming books.
And then on this show too, we pushed new guests too. Like we got Matt Schwartz on.
Well, he's been a reoccurring.
He's been recurring, but it's like it was good to do the 5-person Halloween stuff where we had Matt and Jocko on at the same time. Like I thought
Yeah.
that was really fun. It just, and again, our returning guests are always great. So yeah, and other projects. Yeah, I just had projects, and those were like that's always nice. It's just to like. I just think about that, like making stuff.
Yeah, getting
So-
back into the kind of creative
Right.
concept field. Because you were at the beginning of this year, you were also pitching a show.
Yeah, and that's still going, and I'm gonna try to meet up with some people before we go away for the holidays again to chat about that. But yeah, just kind of keeping a little like development thing going, keeping those muscles oiled or whatever. And I don't.
What were some of the highlights for you, like in terms of media, like films, movies, books?
I mean, yeah, I feel like I talk about all that stuff. The
Well, just an overview.
Music. Is there anything musically that stuck out to you?
I don't know. I mean, I
think
did
that I'm kind of hitting a rut where I'm not kind of listening to much new music, and
Well,
that's kind of really got me down.
One other thing I want to, because we've been doing work with Spotify, and they just put out their 2017 Spotify Wrap.com, and basically what it is you go on there at like 2017 Spotify
and wrap up.
RAP, and you connect with your account, and it tells you how many songs you listen to, how many hours you spent or minutes you spent listening to stuff, like fun statistics.
Yeah.
And then it shows you like, okay, little quick like fun trivia thing, like which was your favorite album, which was your, what category of music did you listen to the most? So those are fun. And then it shows you, here's a playlist of all the music that you listen to, like here are your top 100 or whatever. Then it says, here's the stuff you might have missed. And so based on your taste, it kind of gives you another curated list of things to check out. So I think that's pretty neat, just to kind of see what their algorithms and their programs are putting together for you. Especially like the way I eat content on Spotify is very like one of the things that I listened to a lot was we went and saw the Groundhog Day musical, which I think I talked about, and I would just put that on and just listen to that a bunch. And you sometimes even just single tracks from it because they would be sticking in my head. And then sometimes I would have like we put on a random playlist at work, and that would get stuck in my head, and I would just listen to like one or two tracks. So I'd kind of drill on some stuff, and then like listen to the Over the Garden Wall soundtrack released this year on vinyl. So I got like and it was on Spotify, so I got that downloaded and listened to that a bunch and watched that series again. And
yeah, Spotify's got definitely doing the best in terms of that, like the recommendation stuff. Like
Right.
they have that like weekly playlist recommendation thing. That's also really excellent, and I do miss that about Spotify now that I'm with the Apple Music.
So that's the music stuff. Like again, just kind of chasing down just random. Like a lot of it is just listen to like at the office. We'll put something on and just see what comes up, and then chase those down. And so it's not often an album. If it is an album, it's something that I've like sought out. Like I said, the Blasting Company thing. Movie wise, I mean, I've probably talked about a bunch of them. We saw a bunch at the Draft House. I feel
Like now that you're looking back, because usually I think often when we talk about the podcast, we've recently seen them, and it's that kind of that first blush. And sometimes when you sit with it for a while, like what really stood out of all your faves? Like what are your kind of your top?
I guess for me it's still like a blur. Like I would have to kind of look at the movies that came out and go, I saw all that stuff.
I think it's part of that aging thing where I kept thinking of films, and then I realized like, oh, those were 2016.
Oh yeah. Well, like I was even
2 years ago.
I was trying to think of like what animated features did I see this year, and I couldn't.
I was
even
bad this
recall.
year. I don't think I.
Like
I, don't
I
think
still
I
haven't
saw
seen
any.
Coco.
I saw Moana. Was that this year?
They came out on video this year. I think
Yeah.
that came out in the theaters.
But
last
I
year.
didn't. I still haven't gone through all of it.
I
Like, I've
watched half of it.
Yeah, I'm same boat, literally.
I haven't seen Coco. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but
I heard the opening short is a doozy.
well, it's gone now. So,
Oh, really?
oh, you didn't hear?
No,
about this?
no, I've been really
So
out of the loop.
by popular demand, they've removed the Frozen thing as of I think December 8th or 7th.
It was a Frozen short.
Well, see,
yeah,
that's,
it was a 21-minute short.
What?
For,
That's
of
really
Olaf
long.
from Frozen. Yeah.
so it's
It's
three
too long
it's
for a
three
short. It's
levels
not
of
short.
bad. One, it's not a Pixar short.
Right, yeah,
in
they're
front of a Pixar movie.
cross-pollinating.
Yeah, but I mean, Pixar and Disney, they blend already now. I mean,
But
this
we
is-
don't want that. We want to keep
Yeah,
them
but
separate.
they should they blend, but it's off brand.
makes
Frozen
me
is
wonder
not,
if they've
Frozen
had
is
so
not
many-
as rich.
so many kind of recent near misses at Pixar that they're like, let's throw some Frozen on the front to get some kids in the seats because
But that also means that they're not giving a voice for something original within Pixar, which is sad.
yeah. So you think that the movie that's just like the movie that Guillermo del Toro put out 4 years ago is giving voice
See,
to the original?
I don't think that matters. Like, because we had Bugs Life and Ants living in the same time. Like, movie
What are you-
development takes so long, especially animated film development.
But I don't
And
know
all
what-
you have to hear is, "Hey, somebody's making a bug movie and hiring bug people. Ooh, let's make a bug movie." And
What are you
and
talking
then-
about, Keith?
There's a movie that came out a couple years ago called The Book of Life that I think Guillermo del Toro either produced or he might have even directed some aspects of it. But it was a book about a kid who goes into the afterlife in Mexico, and it's like it's playing with all these same themes of like
As they say, ideas are cheap. It's all about the execution.
I guess
Mhm.
so.
I think potentially the only animated movie that I saw this year in the theaters.
Oh, that's 82% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Coco?
No, Book of Life.
I think the only animated movie I saw in the theaters this year was the Lego Batman movie.
You saw
Oh,
it
yeah.
in a theater?
Yeah, so did I.
It was fun, and
Yeah, I thought that was last year.
so.
I saw it at home.
I mean, it's fun. So that's kind of. I mean, that's wild. Like, I didn't end up seeing Red Turtle. I really wanted to see that, or Your Name, which is another like really popular one.
Oh, I did see. Was that this year? The girl with no hands.
Was that a film or just a
That
short?
was a feature film, all like drawn by one animator.
Oh yeah, you definitely spoke about it this year. Yeah.
That was a standout. That was great. I think it's just like the problem with a lot of those smaller things is like there's nothing reminding you of them.
Yeah.
You know.
There are no action figures on the
Yeah, it barely got a release.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. It all kind of starts to blend.
Well, do we want to do we're kind of running out of time. So we want to do a little like lightning round of what we're looking forward to in 2018?
Yeah, why don't you start us off?
Oh. Well, I don't have an awful lot other than, I'm excited my boy's going to start like actual public school soon, hopefully, and that's going to be that's going to be something to look forward to 2018. Something media-wise I'm looking forward to is the Go team is going to put out a new record
Nice.
this year, actually, 2000. So by the time this airs, I think that record will be out. But I'm looking forward to that. It's been about a year and a half since their last record, and every one of their records is just, it's flawless. I mean, it's amazing. Their track record is just so great. All the records are fantastic. But that's about it. I'm not really looking forward to Star Wars. Not really looking forward to, even though I go to bat for the Marvel movies, I'm not looking too forward to the Marvel
Infinity War.
Yeah, just 'cause, I mean, even as a kid reading those books, Thanos, I never really cared for Thanos that much. He always seemed like a ripoff, and then I found out as I was older he is a direct ripoff of Darkseid.
I know you said you're not excited about Star Wars. What about Han Solo?
No, not excited about
I'm
it.
curious about that one. I don't know if I should be excited yet.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I have as a nerd growing up in nerd life. How could you not be enthusiastic about it? But I just feel that they're just like, it's now like we're not nerds anymore. We're being preyed upon. We're not finding cool stuff and being enthusiastic about it. We're being forced.
We're a demographic.
Yeah, and it's just like they've learned how to manipulate our enthusiasm, and that's kind of a real, it's a real kind of come to Jesus moment for me, and it bums me out.
Well, it may just mean too that like if you define yourself as such, like is nerd define your taste, or does nerd define how you approach
Nerd
media
defines
in the world?
in my opinion, defines how you jump into a thing and kind of gobble up as much of it as you can. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, well,
like you don't just you don't just read Marvel comics. You try to get as much information about that as you can, about the characters, about the timelines, and all that stuff.
right.
And
Well,
so
I guess that's where I kind of go, look, if you feel like it's becoming so force-fed to your consumption patterns, then instead of eating the same stuff, go find something else.
Well, that's why I'm saying
apply your consumption patterns to those other things.
And that new thing for me is I don't know, insert funny thing. I don't know. I lost it. I thought I had something. Right. I thought I had something I could joke about there, but
viruses.
flat Earth theory.
Yes.
You're getting really deep into viruses. You're trying all different kinds.
Oh,
You're going
but speaking
deep.
of which, the Maximum Fun podcast. Oh no, Ross and Carrie.
Yeah,
they do a fun thing about flat Earth people.
They had that guy on. Did you listen to that? They interviewed.
I only listened to the first episode of the Flat Earth.
In the last one, they interview a flat earther.
Cool.
It's pretty brutal.
Awesome.
I mean, they're very nice people. So.
Yeah.
I talked to Plapp about that guy, Ross Blotcher, and Plapp was like, yeah, we look at, like, we've worked at all the same places. We kind of have the same resume, but we never run into each other.
That dude's heavy Disney, though. He does a lot
now
for
he
Disney,
is, but he used to be, like, at Shupo, I think, and all that stuff, like, on Simpsons and everything, or Futurama. So they were kind of, they may have even worked on, they've worked on a lot of stuff together.
So those of you listening to this who aren't our friends, Plapp is a good friend of ours and a former guest on our show.
Yeah.
He lives out in L.A. and is a very successful animation dude.
So one last thing, what would you tell people that they should look forward to in 2018?
Look forward to, hopefully, some political changes in November.
All right.
And look forward to going out there and trying to help. I mean, if you take the same view as us on this panel and are kind of like shell-shocked from 2016, go out there and, there are lots of things
Activate
to do.
Yourself or help someone become activated.
Or and if that's not your thing, that's cool too, but don't not vote. It's a really
find the Manchurian Candidate and activate them.
Mm-hmm.
Jules. 2018.
I guess I was, looking at what's coming up.
I mean, the new Jurassic Park movie.
Oh yeah, I mean.
Oh yeah. Oh, what? I didn't mention that.
Yeah, I feel like even though they rebooted it, I still have that feeling they're still making those. Huh. And I think Han Solo, I'm like,
Incredibles 2.
I'm excited about Incredibles
I like
2.
the actor who plays the Han Solo guy, though.
Yeah, see, I don't know anything about it. It's hard. I think it is hard to go and recast somebody.
Well, it's tough because it's a one-man
guess is
act.
what they did with
It's him on a ship for 90 minutes in a cockpit. It's a very limited set.
Oh, see, now you're making it interesting.
It's kind of challenging, and that's where
it's like that movie Phone Booth.
It's Han Solo, the one-man act.
Han alone.
One-man play.
It's like for an hour and a half, he's trying to get off by himself.
So, Jules, did you see the Coen Brothers movie where it's about Hollywood, Golden Age Hollywood?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the cowboy guy. Is the guy who's playing Han Solo.
Ah, interesting. But yeah, I'm definitely excited about The Incredibles 2. Although I'm a little wondering, because so much time has passed, I'm wondering if is it still gonna feel fresh?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I still think I'll enjoy it. I still think it'll be a tight movie.
It'll be crafted well, yeah.
Yeah, and otherwise it's just a
here's the
bunch
list
of
on here's a
sequels.
list on my phone.
Well, I'll jump ahead on mine if you guys are talking
Go for
movies. The Phantom Thread, I'm very excited for.
But isn't that technically this
Technically, it's this year, but it's really only this year to hit the Oscars.
year? Yeah, but I
It's
am excited
really
about
coming
that.
out in early 2018 into theaters. So I'm a big Paul Thomas Anderson fan. It's very hard for him to do wrong. Even Magnolia, which can get critiqued pretty hard, I find very enjoyable. And there's just so much in his movies, and I'm very excited. I think he does a great job with Daniel Day-Lewis as well. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see
I
the
think
Phantom
even
Thread.
when he stumbles, his movies are interesting.
And speaking of potential stumbles, some people aren't big fans of Mr. Fox, Fantastic Mr. Fox, but I am interested in Isle of Dogs, the new Wes Anderson, another Anderson vehicle that's a stop motion piece.
Yeah, I'm interested about that as well.
Well, did you guys not like Fantastic Mr. Fox?
I did. I liked it, but I've heard mixed reviews on it, so I don't know. I don't think everyone loves it.
I really liked it.
I found it to be wildly charming.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, he should do more of this. It's so perfect for him. I'm also I'm pretty excited about a lot of our favorite shows returning for more seasons. Like I'm looking forward to more Westworld. Although I'm a little I don't know. Yeah, I'm
Conscious.
I don't know if they can do it again, kind of thing. And obviously it's one more Game of Thrones. I don't know what else.
What about you're not feeling super enthusiastic for 50 Shades, another 50 Shades movie?
Mrs. Grey will see
50
you.
Shades Freed.
What a title.
You're not excited about
The Predator.
Wreck-It Ralph Part 2? Ralph comes to the internet, breaks the internet? I'd see that.
I'm interesting. I kind of want to wait and see. I'm sure that'll be a fun movie also, but I'm not super stoked. I want to be excited for A Wrinkle in Time, but I'm just not.
I'm more excited for Wrinkle in Time than I am for Ready Player One.
Yes, I would agree with you.
Pretty talk about force feeding people based on their demographic. That one does not.
I also feel like that movie should have come out 5 years ago, and it would have it would have been more relevant.
Well, they hit that Gamergate demo they want so hard. I don't know, it just seems like to Keith's point a little played.
I think I'll see Deadpool 2 on video.
Yeah,
I'll see that in the theater. What about Ocean's 8? Anybody interested in Ocean's 8? I would watch that. Why not?
I'd watch it on a plane if there wasn't something else.
That's no good.
Wait, Oceans. They had 3 people who didn't want to come back.
No, it's an Ocean's 11 movie, but it's all ladies, and there are 8 of them.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Sandra Bullock.
Yeah.
And others. Mindy Kaling's in it.
I'm horrified. Mamma Mia 2? Here we go again?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
My.
That is.
And a remake of Death Wish without
It's just terrible.
Yeah,
Well, and that talk about creepy timing.
Yeah.
I mean, those movies were already questionable. And the timing now, it's ugh.
So it sounds to me like it's a good year to just try out some art house films.
I
that's
think
something
so.
I haven't been doing much.
We saw Lady Bird, really liked that.
Good.
Depends on if you're.
I'm really excited to see that.
Greta Gerwig.
Yep.
And it's like
Gerwig.
Gerwig, is Noah Baumbach producing it with her? I forget, but
I
she's
think
directed.
He helped
She
her with
directed
the
and wrote
script
it
or something. Yeah.
It was. Again,
I'm not a big fan of
we've talked
Noah's. Even though I really like, did he co-write Royal Tenenbaums or he co-wrote the
One of
Life Aquatic?
One of the Owens
Yeah.
co-wrote Tannenbaums.
Yeah, I can't remember. It must have been
Or one of
Aquatic
Wilson's.
then. But yeah, I'm really psyched for Lady Bird. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really excited to see it. And I just saw Landline, which just dropped. It's playing on Amazon Prime right now. It's streaming there. I think they bought the rights or something. I don't know, but like I think they produced it. But they released it in the theater, and it's same kind of vibe, I would say, but a little more rom-com-y. But I really enjoyed it. It was really fun and just a pleasant, fun movie.
Yeah.
Go check it out.
My looking forward, pretty much like the big broad strokes. Same deal as you, Keith. Looking for the politics. Interested to see like where podcasts go. Spotify just opened up their platform. It's a growing landscape. I'm interested to see what happens with net neutrality. I think there are going to be some lawsuits that slow down the malfeasance a little bit, and hopefully we get some legislation that actually fixes it.
I hope you're right.
We'll
But
get
yeah,
there.
I mean, I guess again the good thing about what's happening now is that I guess what was put in place wasn't solid enough. Like
It's hot
It was
garbage.
kind of a band-aid. So hopefully it's kind of like you got to break it to really fix it. I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll see.
So lots of breaking.
But
to
anybody
do.
doing any fun traveling in 2018? Any of that to look forward to? I'm going to Europe.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Where
you already
going
got
to
it planned.
A friend of ours is getting married in Spain,
Nice.
and we are gonna go there.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I got to figure it out.
Is that your first European vacation?
No, I've been to Italy, but it will be my first one with my wife and my first one with my kid.
Wow.
He's gonna come along.
Is that
And
early in the year, summer? What time is it?
that's gonna be August.
Oh, wow. okay.
August, I think. I might be wrong about that because I think I remember saying like August. I thought everybody was on vacation in August, so it might not be August.
You gonna run with the Bulls?
Nope. I'm gonna go to Barcelona. It's where we're going is right near Barcelona,
Barcelona.
but it's also I don't know how, but it's oddly not far from France. So we're gonna end up in France a little bit
It's
too.
in northern Spain.
I don't
mean,
know.
the thing is, Europe is not that big.
Yeah,
Each one of those countries is like a state.
that's right.
So it's like, oh, I'm going all the way to Vermont from New York.
Yeah. I kind of want to go to Tokyo this coming like a year again. I don't know. I'll
That'd
see.
be cool.
He's been working me on that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think we should go for our 40th to Japan.
Yeah, I guess that's something else we got to look forward to. Is turning 40.
What's why Japan for the 40? Why? I mean, other than it just being a cool place to see.
I think
you
it's-
guys have both been to Tokyo at different
Yeah.
times, not together.
I think one like Mary's never been,
And Zoya's never been, and she's
Yeah.
kind of mad about it.
and it's something like I know it pretty well, and depending on like because Tom, my brother's about to have or has had now, hopefully, another baby. Like it's the due date is Christmas, so they'll at some point probably take the baby. They may do a Hawaii trip and then go on to Japan from there to see his
With a
wife.
brand new baby?
in like later in the year,
That's
like in the
crazy.
summer or in the late spring or something.
Crazy.
I wouldn't want to be on that airplane.
That's okay.
Don't ride the airplane
when
with
they're
them
that
whole.
little. They sleep pretty good.
I
think
have a
it's- I think
kid.
it's 2
I
and
know all
3.
about it.
I think it's 2 and 3 years old is harder. Don't
From
you
what
think?
I hear,
No, my 3-year-old's awesome on a plane.
Well,
but-
you're lucky
But
because some of them just are exhausting.
but it's they'll just make do. I think on those crazy flights, whatever it happens. So they'll go visit. I'm thinking they'll visit aunties or something, and maybe I'll see if I can see what their plans are.
that's cool,
I
man.
think too is like it's a pretty pricey trip, and turning 40 is a good excuse.
A
to
milestone.
splurge.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be fun. And then I don't know. Otherwise, just kind of we're gonna go to Indianapolis, do Gen Con again. It'll be the 51st Gen Con this year. And every year our contingent gets bigger and bigger, so it's kind of fun to just like spend time with more people and enjoy it. So, yeah, it's a big one. Anything else? Any last thoughts?
I mean, I'm sure I'll be going to France
Oh, nice.
to visit family, and I guess we were talking about we might make. We'll probably also stop by Berlin because a friend of ours is moving. Well, talking about moving there. We'll see what happens.
So-
Anybody the podcast might know?
Nope. It's newer acquaintance from Zoya's grad program.
So another thing, this is kind of like maybe something we might do. Friends of ours have went on a cruise with another friend for that friend's birthday, right? So the couple that we play Seafall with went on a cruise, like a Disney cruise, with some friends for those friends' birthday. And I'm not a cruise person. I haven't done a large cruise. I'm pretty good on big boats. I don't have issues with that stuff. But mostly I know that from like ferries, like long ferry rides. Mary's not so sure. She's never done that kind of stuff before. So
you thinking about a cruise?
Thinking about it, like when I think about cruises, the only ones I really have ever thought about wanting to take are ones where you just can't get to that place and see that thing. Like you can't see Antarctica, you can't see the fjords, you can't see the Alaskan coast
Unless
you're on the water. To really like.
Are there Antarctic cruises?
Yeah, you fly
to like
it's like a certain
Argentina
island, and then you
something?
hop. No, you just fly south. Oh, maybe it's Argentina, but you fly pretty far south. Then you hop on a boat, and the boat continues on to the Antarctic.
Wow!
And you just kind of check it out, and then I don't know if they even go all the way there, but and then they kind of scoot you back.
And then you go like, that's a lot of ice.
Let me eat another shrimp.
A lot less than there used to be.
So that's.
Can I get a hold of one of them penguins? Hey, can I just make a statement here about something? Not to get political again.
Oh.
But freaking penguins on Christmas stuff. What's the deal with now everybody's got penguins on Christmas stuff?
Because they're cute and it's cold.
They're on the South Pole.
They're
okay?
secular,
Penguins
Keith.
Don't go to the North Pole. And that's where Santa Claus is at.
They followed the North Star to the North Pole to give baby Jesus fishes.
Well, like here's my thing. You know what's a cute bird, which is way like less gross than a penguin? A puffin. And guess where they live? The North fucking Pole, people.
Oh, that's
if
true.
you're gonna make a Christmas bird in a cute little winter hat, make a puffin. They're
Well,
freaking
in
cool.
Iceland they eat puffin,
Well, there you go.
so make a cooked puffin on a plate.
There you go.
Christmas, your
Like
Christmas
polar
puffin.
bears, you're gonna make that on your Christmas card? Go for it. That's great. But penguins, I mean, it's just not working for me. Just cool it with that.
So hopping right quick back. So the cruise thing is we might test like a weekend cruise to see if Mary can do it. Because the other thing is, again, talking about demographic nerds, they have like week-long Disney Star Wars cruises.
What?
Yeah. And the thing about
is it
So you
Disney
wouldn't take
and
the
Star
Weezer
Wars?
cruise. So you're saying
No.
no to the Weezer cruise.
Weezer.
Yeah, that's too cool, Keith.
Yeah.
Not nerdy
What's a
enough.
Weezer cruise?
Literally, Weezer is on a boat with a bunch of bands, and you hear them play music, and you
That's
take
kind of
a-
like the Joko cruise a little bit too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, no, this would be more like when they were doing it, I guess they did a Halloween Disney cruise. They go to Florida, get on the boat, sail around, and there are theaters that play Disney movies. And Disney just means like Marvel movies, like the whole Disney thing on
The whole
rotation.
oeuvre. Could be
And
Star Wars movies.
Every channel on the TV is Disney stuff. So you're
you
basically
can't
like
escape.
you're couch surfing. It's I don't know. The more distance I get from it, the less excitement I have for the idea. But
Well, I just think I mean I've never done it, but if it's something you're enthusiastic about, take a cruise.
right,
Why not?
I think it's more about who you go with too. Like being
Yeah.
around with friends would make it.
That would definitely make it better, I think, in
Right.
my opinion. That you would have like people that because I live in New York and I'm not super good at just meeting strangers,
Right.
which is kind of a waste of a city. I feel like that would be compounded on a cruise because you would be almost like forced to try to kind of meet people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's a level of kind of
Could be in a good way. though.
anxiety I don't want. It could be great. I mean, it
Yeah.
could turn out great, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying like I don't want to have that pressure on me.
Yeah.
And if I had some buds with me
Yes.
that I knew were there to take care of that.
I think going with friends is.
It's like being in high school at a mandatory education.
So I guess what Holt is saying is if you're one of our friends and you want to go on a cruise, hit him up. He's
Yeah.
on Twitter.
Or new to you cruise.
BoardGhost.Twitter.
2018.
Yeah.
New cruise. So yeah, I think
Don't they do a cruise for the Maximum Fun Drive?
No, I don't think they do anymore.
That would be the one to go on.
They do Max Fun. I don't think they're going to do Max Fun East anymore. It's just going to be West this year.
John, what's the name? What are you? The Board Ghost Network?
I don't have a network. All right, I
I don't know. 3 shows. That's
I know.
network.
That's
I think
right.
we've tapped 2017 and 2018, gang.
That's right. So what are some of the so let's rattle off a couple of themes we have for coming up on New to You this year.
I don't have it.
We have some, I thought we had one like part of a balanced breakfast coming
Part
up
of Bounce
soon.
Breakfast will be our next one.
Like strength in
part of
the
this
strength in the
complete
face of adversity, I think is
Right.
one coming up.
Have you heard the good news?
That's a good one.
right. Waiting for the
Fish,
waiting-
fish, and more fish.
Right.
That's a theme coming up.
The horror.
When you looked back, there was one set of footprints. Was one that we were gonna do.
4 spooky, 6 me.
That's right. Five spooky to Christ was another one. Yeah.
It's St. Patrick's Day, and why aren't I drunk?
We'll roll out of here and go to the end of season 3.
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error, just emotion.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to season 3 of the New to You show. It was a good time, and we're excited for the next season. For another season
What
of 52.
a year. What a season.
Wait,
so
hold
many
on.
laughs.
There's 3 of us, 3 seasons. That's it, right?
Yeah. One of
Oh,
us,
we're doing
one of
another
us
one?
has died at the end of every season.
Yeah. We got it. Who's going to get
So
replaced?
finally, we're all ghosts, and we have to be on his ghost podcast.
Forever.
Bored ghost.
So I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Johan, on Instagram at board_ghost, and you can find my ghosty storytelling RPG podcast at boardghost.com, and you can find my book club podcast at woundandstab.com. We're getting near the end of House of Leaves. January's going to wrap it up, and then we're going to move into some short works, and then we might tackle Sandman, Neil Gaiman's 10 to 12 comic. I think it was a 10 comic volume epic.
Which would death be rolled
We'll
in
wrap
there?
it up death after, like it will kind of
Cool.
do the whole thing, go into death, maybe a couple other little like endless vigils, sideways, Sandman tales here or there. So yeah, we'll talk that and get some guests on for that. But yeah, Keith, where can people find you?
You can find me under my tombstone because I just died at the end of season 3. Spoiler alert. And its inscription is earthlingkeith.com.
All right.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Beautiful Jules.
All right. So, gang, to find out more about the stuff we talked about in this episode, I probably won't put a bunch of links to it.
No, because it's pretty
Just a
scattered.
bunch all over the
lot
place.
of links.
To find links to us and
Maybe
I'll pull a highlight per.
A few gifs.
I'll put some gifs up there. To find out more information about the flat Earth.
Gifts for you.
We'll go to newtoyoushow.com. You can follow us on Twitter at newtoyoushow. Mostly for Facebook, I just kind of post it to my Facebook page. So I don't know how public I am, but you can follow my other pages, I guess. For Wound and Stab and
Or you know what? You can always use more friends.
That's right.
He likes it if you like his stuff.
Speaking of liking, go to iTunes and leave a review or rating.
Hopefully a glowing review.
Yeah. Radioactive. So a toxic review. So go and also tell people about the show. It may not be new to you, this show, but hopefully you can make it new to someone else.
Yeah.
Recommend our recommendation show to someone.
There you go.
So the other piece of information I wanted to get part is we are not going to go onto Spotify because they have not for any reasons of their own. They'll be fine. My other shows will probably go on there. They have a pretty strong policy against putting content that doesn't have licensed music on it. And we put clips on in like a fair use capacity, like Creative Commons fair use or whatever, in that like we talk about the stuff and kind of
play a short segments
for the context of the piece. And
Which we are allowed to do. We're not breaking any rules.
It is a gray area. We aren't breaking any laws, but if you're being a stickler about rights, like Spotify is, and they're right to be because they're on the hook.
That's how they make money.
Deals with musicians, and it's better to be in good faith towards other musicians. So New to You will not be on Spotify.
If you're going to air toward the sides of the artists.
We will not be on Spotify, but there will be plenty of other shows there. I will put Wound and Stab and Board Ghost on those if they accept it on their platform. But New to You is on all sorts of platforms. So we're on Google Play, we're on your iTunes platforms, anywhere that can read.
We're on the internet. Just
an
look
RSS
it up in
feed.
Google.
Yeah.
You'll find us on the internet.
So that's going to do it. We're going to follow up next week with season 4 and
kicking off season 4.
A balanced breakfast. Part of a balanced breakfast will be our theme for season 4, and our topic is to be determined. We won't even tease what our topic is. Not to be determined. The pick along that topic is to be determined. So we're not going to tease that. Maybe if you follow us on Twitter, I'll try to get a tease up of that on Twitter for what that's going to be. Thanks again for listening. Another year.
Happy New Year.
Another year behind us.
Happy holidays.
Yes.
Should old acquaintance be forgot?
But don't forget us, please.
It may not be new, but old lang syne.
New
Make
Year
it old
to you.
time explosion sound.
It's all about the music. This pitiful life is 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 all about the music.
With him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not